morning, good morning. Excuse my delayed essence here. I have been feeling quite under the weather these past couple of days. So, just hanging in there. But yeah, I have your bid here for you, and I want to kind of show you the way that I do it so you have a understanding of the way I get my numbers and the way I formulate these things out. So, jumping right into it, what I do first is I always try to get a good visual of the job site, whether it's through Google Maps, whether it's driving there, or whatever. I just want to get a good visual on the job site. And then, of course, going down the geo report is a very, very high thing that we need to look at. Thankfully, I think this is the correct one. Yeah, this is the correct one. I know there were two versions. Now, in the geo report, we're looking for really three things. We're looking for the PVR of the moisture, as well as the existing moisture, the PI. It is pretty high, so it's very clay soil. Okay. And 2, 4, 8, 10. So they went down 10 feet. Okay. Now, what we want to look at is we'll get to this part down in the graph. This is a little bit confusing when you read it like this, but there's a clearer version down below. So what we want to do is look for this, the PVR, potential vertical rise, right? And that's how much the soil is moving. If it is anything less than an inch, usually they call for no earthwork, remedial work. It is within their tolerable conditions. But for this one, it looks like it is 4 inches, which is not bad, but I mean, it's not good either. Okay, so to get it down to 1.5 inches, excavating the existing soils to the top of the limestone and replacing with select fill. Okay, so cutting down to the top of the limestone and replacing with select fill. So just automatically, this screams hassle. If it was moisture conditioned, it'd be good. But right here we have excavating the soil, which is exporting whatever we cut out, and then also the cost of importing whatever we bring in. So those are two, okay? Two costs, two separate costs, and that we are going to have that in the back of our mind. Next, we look into the pavement, if there's a pavement report. This is all for the concrete guys, the PTI, the PSI of the concrete, and all of their technicalities. But now if we look here into the earthwork and grading, let's see what they say. Select fills, PI 4 to 15, that is fine. No more than 9 inches thick. Very, very good. So nothing out of the ordinary gives us the plus or minus for the select fill. Well, I don't see nothing for the pavement, so we're not going to include lime or flex base or nothing like that for the pavement, unless they want it. Now, we look at the borings. Remember the soil descriptions that were mentioned earlier? Here's where we get a really good look at them. B1 and B2, they're both in the building, nothing in the parking. There's a small detention pond right here. Okay, now if you look here, this is B1, if I believe this should be. Yep, B1. Boring B1. The dark brown clay with a high PI to the tan of the limes to the top of the tan limestone is around 4 feet. So for boring B1, we have 4 feet, right? When we go down to B2, we have 2 feet. Okay. Now, 4 feet and 2 feet, just for me, just to be simple and quick with this, I just call it 3 feet even. Just 3 feet for the whole feet. 3 feet exporting, 3 feet importing of select fill. So that's the way I break that down. So that is the end of the geo report. Now let's get down to the bread and butter. So now that we know this, we know so far that the geo report calls for 3 feet of export and 3 feet of import. No remedial work for the pavement. Now, I'm not sure if you are doing the erosion control, but what I always like to do if I am is I like to locate it, which is the step number 1, and then jump right into the erosion control so you have a good idea of the job site. And I'm going to be giving you a little bit of a pointer here, is we're going to stop by the grading plan, and we're going to look at the erosion control plan really quick. But if we stop by the grading plan, you'll see what I mean here. If you look at the grading plan, it is really full of numbers. It's really confusing for some of us, and it's really just a hassle to look at, right? It's just so many numbers and too confusing. But if we go down to the erosion control plan, which, let me see if I passed it. Nope, right here. We kind of get more of a clearer view. No spot points, no top of curve grades, just contour lines of existing and proposed. So we get a very clear picture of what it is exactly we're going to do here, right? So, construction entrance, 1. Silt fence, 2. Detention pond, there might be some inlet protection. Concrete structure, no inlet protection that I see. And normally what we also like to include is a concrete washout pit. These concrete washout pits we build with probably $50 worth of plastics, 2 loads max of concrete export, and our price is roughly $25 to $3,000 for that. So that's our washout pit, our construction entrance, 2 loads of regular dirt. We also like to say that we include the import and also the export to justify our price. But the export really should be come down to exporting it. We have a screening bucket that we use to clean the rock, so we export it out to another job, to the future next job, to save on having to pay for the new rock. Okay, silt fence, we have a guy that does it for $2.50-ish. We add another $1.50 to bring the skid steer in. For example, if it was full of trees, full of vegetation, we'll bring the skid steer in there and kind of clean it up, and that way it's nice and neat on the line. Okay, and then also before this, we also like to include the mobilization, which to each company it varies depending on their overhead. This is where you kind of want to factor in a little bit of your profit, most of your profit, your margin, all your expenses, all your overhead expenses that you may have. All this goes into your mobilization. And just for a rule of thumb, our mobilization is roughly 5 to 7% of the total price. So if you're not too sure what your mobilization price should be, do everything else first, and let's see if it's like 150,000, then 5% of that would be like 7,500 or around there, or a 7 if you want to go up to like 10,000. So 2 mobilizations, 1 to come in and do all the rough grading, get out of there, and then to come back and do the final grading, and for them to pour the concrete, and then for you to do the backfills, and sometimes, depending on you, the sidewalks. And also, a separate one would be the grading of the detention pond and of course, the sidewalks too. So with that being said, we have construction entrance, washout pit, and then I'm going to say around, well, I'm not going to say, I'm actually going to tell you. On the Macs, they make it very hard for all of our software that we use to measure is all on Windows. So, Plan Swift, Procore, they're all of these that I'm used to. They're all on either on the web, so they're really laggy, or they're on Windows, which I do not like. I'm not a big fan of. So what I do, just to be quick and simple, I'm all about efficiency. I will not spend a lot of time in doing things that really don't matter. I like being out there in the field, which is, what I'd rather be. But once I feel better and once I, get up out of here, but excuse me. So now, looking at this, if you have a MacBook, if you have Preview, you want to go to this little eye right here. You want to click this eye. It's called the inspector. Okay. It gives you the inches of, you might catch on what I'm going to here now. It gives you the inches of the page. The page length is correct and the page width is also correct, right? Yours, if you might open it for the first time, it might be right here in general info. Come on over to where it says crop and make sure it's in inches, 34 by 26 for a normal page like this. And then right here in the selection area, once you start selecting or highlighting an area, it will tell you the length of the object in inches. Now, if you go down to the scale, of course, if you've used a scale, if you go down to the 20, you know that every inch is 20 feet. So with that being said, if I go down here and if I measure the length of the silt fence and it's 7 inches, then I know that in 7 inches, if 1 inch is 20 feet and I have 7 inches, then I have 140 feet, right? So if you come down here and you try to select something and right click and do it, it won't show you nothing. You have to go up to tools and click rectangular selection. And now you're good to go. Now it'll give you the length and the width of certain things. So I have learned this from Miguel and my past mentors, but to always test your scale and to always test your plans, because this has happened to me before. The scale is not correct, or it's not up to scale. So what you want to do is start at the 0, go down to the 20, and the width should be 1. Okay, if you start at the 0 and you go down to the 40, the width should be 2. Let's get this right. There we go. Width should be 2. So now I know that the scale is correct, and then also, just to double check, I know that a parking lot is around 18 feet in length. So it should be 0.95 in the width. So if you go down here, we measure, it's 0.93. So it's perfectly fine. If it wasn't to scale, it would say 0.2, or it would say just anything else that's not close to 0.95. So now that we know that, we go down to the silt fence and just do a long line down. That is 8.5, and then a long line to the side. So the unfortunate part about this is that it does not do angles, but it does do straight lines. So now 12. So 8.5 and 12. We have 20.5 inches. 20.5 inches multiplied by 20 feet is 410 feet. So we have 400. I'm going to call it 450, just because you always want to measure a little bit above, because we always include the price to also take out the silt fence. If we put it in, then we also take it out. If the GC hires somebody else to put in the silt fence, it's not in our scope. But if we install it, we remove it. Okay. Now, with that being said, we have 400 feet of silt fence, a wash-on pit, and a construction entrance. Just off the top of my head, you're looking at $7,500 to $8,500. Well, no, $7,500 in your erosion control. Roughly $5,000 for roughly, I'm gonna say 45 for the construction entrance, 25 for the wash-on pit, and then 1,500-ish for the silt fence. Now that we have that, we go down to the second most important part. I like to break down these plans into 3 phases. You have the erosion control. We get the green light, we go in, we put in the erosion control. Okay, what's next is the demolition plan. We go in and we demo the whole area, but this doesn't pertain to us because the site is roughly clean and clear. So our next plan is just going to be, for simplicity that I like, is the paving plan or the site plan. The grading plan comes next for the cuts and the fills, but just to get a good layout of the job site, I really enjoy the site plan or the paving plan. Very, very nice. Look at this. We have reached the paving plan, and this is why I very much enjoy going to the paving plan, is you will find the specs for the paving. In the geotech, it didn't really specify it, but if you go down to the paving plan, it gives you normally a hint, a symbol: asphalt pavement, concrete pavement thickness, and all of that. So if we go down here, it says compacted and stabilized subgrade for the sidewalk. Okay, but it looks like they're going with asphalt for the pavement. So compacted subgrade and 8 inches of flex space. Who's calling me? Excuse me. I'm not big on answering numbers that are not in my contacts. So going back to this, so if we go down to 8 inches of flex space, so that is what we're going to be having for the pavement area, right? So 8 inches of flex space for the pavement and 3 feet of select fill for the building. Okay. Now that we know that, the sidewalks are going to have nothing. Those are good. So our big areas are the parking lots, the drive-in right here, and the building, as well as the detention pond. Okay, so now to break this down, we got to go down into the demolition. As you saw, there was no demolition plan, but that doesn't mean that there's no demolition in this. There's 2 main things in the demolition. It's existing pavement, trees, buildings, old structures, concrete, curbs, all of that. And then there's stripping of the topsoil, stripping and removing the topsoil. That's all grassy areas, taking off the top 4 to 6 inches of grass. Okay, so the job site is the majority of the job site is grass, so that is easy. That's one part. The other part is what we didn't see, the demolition plan, because there's no buildings, trees, pavement, really curbs that need to be taken out. But there always is something. We always have to connect to something. So in the pavement plan, and was where we're going to find our demolition, which is right here. Saw cut existing asphalt for a smooth connection. A lot of guys miss out on this step. So we have 55 and 70. 70 and 55. Let's just do 70 and 60. 130 feet of curb to take out. 130 feet of curb. We're just going to keep it short and sweet. $10 a linear foot. For the saw cutting and exporting, it shouldn't be that bad for the asphalt. So $1,300 to $1,500 for removal of the curb is what I would say for this. I'm gonna have you kind of start to notice how I do my bids, because I send off so many bids a day that I don't really have the time to break it down and say, oh, well, it's going to be $59.60. And I have also noticed with my experience that GCs do not like that. They'd rather you tell them it's going to be $2,000 instead of it's going to be 764 feet at $2.19, which brings plus tax, which brings out your total to $1,857.94. They don't like that kind of stuff, and me personally, I don't either. I'm too meticulous. I'm not sure if it's my OCD or what it is, but I like good, clean, fat, factual, straight numbers. So 130 feet, $10 roughly, so $1,500. Okay. Next, the stripping of the soils. Okay. Whenever we do a job site like this, we look majority of the time we look at the pavement area and the building and what is being taken up. Sometimes in some job sites, the whole job might just be grassy green areas, and it's only a small, like whenever we do Taco Bells or Salad and Goes, there's a very small layout of the pavement and the drive-through area and the building, and the majority of the property itself is green areas. If I was to charge the the stripping of the whole area, and this has happened. They look at us and they say, you're trying to overcharge us. And they do notice that. They do notice these small gimmicks and things like that. But for this job site, because of the complexity of it and the complexity of everything, we are going to be stripping the whole thing. Okay, look at this. We have cuts up here. We have roughly grayed green area right here. But we have cuts everywhere. This area is going to be cut and used. There's a big detention pond area. This whole job site is going to be stripped, and where it's not stripped, it's going to be stockpiled for the backfill. Okay. Now I can get all nice and technical with measure outs, and then of course I have showed you how to measure it. I would just come in here and measure it just roughly, makes just something like this. Let's see. I would just oversize, undersize, and I would just call this good. But this is just me. And let's say I get 45,000 feet, I'll call it 47. Okay, I'll just round up. Or probably if I get 47, I'll just call it 50. Okay. But for this job site, because it is taking up the whole lot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and look at the lot size. 1.145, 1.10, 1.15, excuse me, acres. An acre is roughly 43,000 square feet and some change, so I just call it 43. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 43 times 1.15, and let's see what I get. 49.45, so 49,450 square feet. I'm going to call it 50. Okay, so I have 50,000 square feet here. I do not like to charge by the square footage for anything more than 20,000 square feet. I like to convert it over into square yards. I do that by dividing the square feet by 9. So 50 divided by 9 is going to give me 5,555. Again, I'm going to round up. I don't like that 555. I'm going to give it, I like to do in intervals of 250. So it's either 4,000, 4,250, 45, 4,750, or 5. So in this case, it's going to be 5,750. To keep it short and sweet, just because it's all grass, shouldn't really be more than $2 a square foot. A square yard for this. This is just my price with my experience. It'll take you, for an acre, it will take you maybe a day maximum to strip that grass. So what did we say, 5,750 multiplied by 2 feet? This is 11.5. So the stripping of, I like to keep it short and sweet, stripping of all of the topsoil in pavement, buildings, sidewalk, and detention pond areas, 11.5. Okay. 1 day of work, 11.5, short and sweet. If you feel a little generous, you could go down to 10. Okay, but just keeping it to $1.50 with you, 11.5. Okay. Now we go into the building area next. We go into the building. Remember, we have to export 3 feet of cut, and we have to import 3 feet of fill. Of how big of a size? 40 by 60. But we also go 5 feet out both ways. So in reality, it's 50, 70. Some GCs will tell me, hey, why are you charging me more square footage whenever the plan clearly says, it says 2,400 square feet. Can you not read the plans? And I say, excuse me, mister, can you not read the geocheck where it says go out 5 feet past the building line? And that is us being generous. The geocheck, some of them ask us to go 5 feet out the flat work. So if you get a bad geocheck, he'll ask you to go all the way out here instead of just 5 feet out, which is somewhere right here. He'll ask you to go somewhere crazy. So like in these corners. Yeah, like where the flat work is. Maybe in this side you won't say anything. But wherever there's concrete, if they're not nice, they will make you extend it past the flat work. So it's always a good backup to have. So 50 by 70, 5.7. That's 3,500. Let's see, 50 times 70. Yep, 3,500 square foot building. We roughly added 1,000 square feet. That is where a lot of these guys make mistakes. They only go up to the building corner and that instance. Of course, this job site is asking also for the 8 inches of flex space. Not going to make the same mistake on the last job where I only gave it 6, but you know the deal here. Now, we go down here. We go 3,500 square feet times 3 feet. 10.5 is what we're looking at as far as cubic feet of soil that is going to be moved. Okay. I like to convert these cubic feet into cubic yards, which we do by dividing it by 27. So 25 divided by 27 gives us 400. 400 divided by 20 cubic yards, around 20 loads of export for the building. Now, for this building, you have 20 loads of export. I just want you to put that in the back of your mind. Okay? Do not include the export in this bid right now. You need to make money off of this, and you're not going to make no money if you just charge the export of the soil, because basically what would have to happen is the dirt has to go into the trucks as you're exporting it, and then you'd have to, of course, factor in the cost of you loading the trucks, and then it's a hassle. Do not do it that way. Do it like this. Measure out the square footage, what we did, 3,500, divided by 9 for the square yards to get the square yardage. 3,500 divided by 9 is 400, right? So 400 times 3 feet is 1,200 1 foot cubic yardage of the building that you will process. Okay, so you want to multiply 1,200 by 12. You're going to get roughly 14.5. I'm going to call it 15. So you're going to get 15 is going to be part of your building prep. Okay, 15,000 to excavate and prep the building. Okay, this is simply for exporting out the building, cutting it down to grade, and moving the soil out of the way. Okay, 3 feet of soil for 3,500 square foot building. 14.4. I'll show you in a little bit where I get these 12s and where I get my numbers. Well, actually, I guess I'll just show you right now. I'll give you a couple of links later on, but what I do is I go to the cities, and of course, you'll see here Arcadia Services, yada yada yada, Black Rock Construction, J&L, Estrada Concrete Company. You can go and find bid tabulations. And of course, you want to make sure they're recent. 2025, December 4th, 2024. Recent bids. Do not go down and look at the 2010s or none of those. You can for reference and all that. But you will always get a clear layout of what exactly other companies are charging. And you will be able to give yourself a good position to win these job sites. If you look at everyone, I do not want to go into detail. This is how we won a big subdivision, but I want to get into detail. Let's go back to this. Okay, so 15,000, 14.5, whatever you want to call it, to excavate out the building. We have excavated out the building. The way I calculate the square footage for the select fill is 1 truck of select fill roughly can cover a parking lot and a half of 1 foot cap of select fill. So 1 whole parking lot and half of another one, which is 300 square feet. So what I want to do is I want to find the total square footage of the building. So 35 times 3 for 3 feet is 10.5, right? 10.5. And I want to divide that by 300, and I'm going to consider it 35 loads of select fill. The reason why it is more than the building itself, I think we were at 20, is because the building itself, whenever you excavate it, it is loose. The soil is going to swell. The soil is going not as compacted as whenever you put the select fill in and you compact the select fill and you go 5 feet out, of course. And there's just always going to be the compaction that once you compact it all down, you're going to lose some, right? And then, of course, the reason why I'm looking at 35 is because the way that I like to look at this is say it's going to be an $800 a load, imported, compacted, and spread out. Okay, so it's all under one line. And the reason why I like to say that is because that includes all of the select fill, and you're not breaking it down into separate categories. It's just one straight sweet number. So if we're looking at 35 times 800, we're looking at $28,000 in select fill. That is what I am looking at for this. And again, I wouldn't say this is 28. I would just round it up to 30. Okay. So if the building is 3,500 square feet, and let's see, what do we did 30,000. 127, which is roughly the action that we get. So with that being said, we are done with the building. So we have 15,000 for the prepping of the soil of the building, and then 30,000 for the import of select fill. So 45,000 for the total building prep is what I'm looking at. Okay, now for the flex space for the building, it's almost the exact same way, except we would follow the 8 inches instead of 6 inches, or the foot. We would do 10 inch. Oh, excuse me. Yes, 8 inches. So we want to bid it. We're gonna grade it to 7 inches, but we want to bid it to 9 inches. Okay, so we want to get the square footage of this whole thing. And how are we gonna do that? I'm gonna rough grade this to here, go down, and then I am just gonna tweak and peak these to match inside of the building. Right. Now that I got this, I roughly got, you see all these corners, you see how I'm up? There you go. I have the whole parking lot in, but I also have these corners that are kind of sticking out and all that. These corners that are sticking out is really just so this, whatever square footage this is, can fit in here, and that is quite a bit. So I am going to extend this out just a tad bit to include all that. Now that we're here, we're looking at 9.5 times 9.5. 9.5 inches multiplied by 20 is 190 feet. So we're looking at a square of 190 by 190 gives us 36,1. We're just going to call it 36,000. 36,000 square feet of pavement, or as you know I like to call it, 4,000 square yards. So 4,000 square yards of pavement. The pavement prep, I like to be at, let's see, if we're putting flex space in, we're going to be at like $5 a square yard. So 5 times 4, 20. 20,000 for the prep of the pavement, and then I'm going to up it up to $6 for the final grading. That's whenever we put the flex space in. So we're going to do 6 times 4, that's 24,000 for the final grading. And then you're looking at 8 inches for the flex space. So 8 inches for 36,000 square feet. For you, I'd really recommend you do 40,000. Just round it up and do it from there. 8 inches. Don't forget about the 9. Just do 8 inches at 40,000 square feet. And whatever that gets you is going to be for 8 inches of flex space here, and for the approaches. Okay, so once that is out the way, we have one more thing. We have the grading of the detention pond and the sidewalks and the backfills. as well as the export of the soils. So when we go down to the grading of the back area, the backfill areas, green areas, and all of that, there is one simple way I like to do this. Subtract the total square footage, 50,000, from the pavement and the building combined. So we're looking at 30. This is where I undercut the build. This is where I undercut the pavement. The pavement, I know we said 40,000. Now I'm going to give it 35. Okay, because whenever we backfill, we're going to be backfilling very, very close to the pavement, and it's going to be very small and meticulous work. And we're going to be working around curbs and things like that, so we have to go up a little bit on the square footage for the backfilling area. So 35 and 3,500 is going to give us 38.5. Let me see. Let me make sure I'm giving you the right number. 35,000. Excuse me. Yep, 38.5. 38.5 minus 50 is going to be 11.5 in pavement. Excuse me, in backfilling. 11.5, of course, as you know, I like to convert it over to square yardage. It's going to give us 1,277. I'm going to call it 1,500. Okay. 1,500 square yards in backfilling concrete areas and detention pond areas. Now, I could break this down, but I will show you maybe in another video or another time, but I'm just going to keep this really short and sweet with you. For half of the area, it's going to be really close, backfilling, sidewalks, nothing too shabby, nothing too bad. So for 750 square yards of the backfilling, it's going to be easy peasy. And I'm going to call it $7 a square yard just because it's so small. If it was maybe like 2,000 square yards of backfill, maybe I'd consider 5. But the smaller the amount of the quantity, the higher the price per unit price that it has to be. So we're looking at 750 times 7. So $6,000 for the easy part of the backfilling. Okay. For the not so easy part, the other 750 square yardage, we have to roughly go with the price that we charge for excavating out the building, which is not $7 that we did for this. It is closer to 12, but because it is not for the building and it's a smaller area, we're gonna have to go a little bit higher, and it's more meticulous. It's a little bit. You have to do slopes. You have to factor in if it rains. You have to factor in the meticulous. That's a big factor that we have to include in all this. So we're looking at 750 square yards, and we're going to do $18 a square yard. So 13.5 is what we would do for the detention pond area. 2 feet a cut. I am giving you maybe 2 days max. We'll go down into the we'll go down into the grading area just to show you the final piece of the puzzle. But we're looking at 13.5 for the detention pond area, and I think I said 6 for the green area. So if we do 6 and 13, that is 6 and 13. It's 21.5. So 21,000 for the detention pond area and all of that. So if we add all of this up together, this is the final number, and then we're just going to add the export of the soil. And there's a good reason for that. This is what I want to tell you. Okay, so the final number that we're looking at here, erosion control, we're looking at 12,000. This is just me upping it. The demolition, which is the removing of the grass and the removal of the curbs or the asphalt or the approaches, looking at 1,500, right, for that. And then we're looking at, what did we say for the 50,000? 50,000, we converted it over to square yardage, which is 555. So we said 5,750 multiplied by 2, that's 11. So we're looking at 15. Let's call it 12,000. So 12,000 for the erosion control, 12,000 because we are overshooting the erosion control. 12,000 for the erosion, 12 for the demo. So we're at 24. Okay, now let's get into the building. We're looking, I think we said 15 for the building. So 24 plus 15, that's 39. Okay, so we're at 39 for the building, all the way up to the building. Okay, now let's add the select fill. Select fill, what did we say was 28, so let's call it 30. So we're at 39 plus 30, we're at 69.5, roughly. Okay, so now let's go into the pavement area. What did we say this was? 4,000 square feet. 20 for the rough grading, 24, let's call it 25 for the final grading. So that's 20, 45. So 45 plus 70 puts us up at 115. Yep, 115,000. Now what we have to do is add the flex space. I just can't do the flex space right now off the back of my mind, but I'll let you add that. So we have the flex space. Okay, so we're at 115. Okay, and we set for this, it was 13, and then 20 for 6, so 21. So just call it 20. So we're at 115, 25, 35. So we're at $135,000 for this job site so far. Now let's add the flex space, and I just had to go through all that before I forget. I'm very, very meticulous in my mind, and I'm as you can tell, I'm just straight to the point with these numbers. Okay, so now once we say that 135, let's just call it 140. We're at 140. I'm just giving you a heads up just to see where my mind is at. So we're at 140, right? So now let's go down to the grading plan. The grading plan is 7.0. When we go down to the grading plan, there are two ways that we do the grading plan here. There is a way that I did it in Plan Swift that would take me, around 4 hours to do. And I would go in here and specifically draw out each contour line and record every grade point and just do it all. Especially the detention ponds are a lot harder. Yes, that would take me like around 4 hours. And then also, whenever I was a surveyor, I would do something that's called a topo on this whole thing. And that would take me around maybe 45 minutes to an hour and a half for something this size. Maybe since this is just grass and no trees or nothing. So once I'm set up, I can knock this out in topo in an hour and a half. Now, the beautiful thing about a topo is that all it is comparing an old elevation to a new elevation in a grid style formula. So for something like this, I would do a 3x3 grid, just to get a good number. One right here, one in the middle, one on the edge. Now middle line, one on the edge, one in the middle, one on the edge. And now bottom line, edge, middle, edge. So I would have 9 points. And I would average out roughly the cut and the fill for each point. So if I had minus 1.5 foot here, grade here, minus 1.5 foot here, minus 1.5 foot here, plus 2 feet here, I believe, or 1, I would come out and then minus 2 feet here. Let's see, 601 and 599, 598.8. So 601 and 599. So 2 feet and 2.5 at its lowest. But it looks like after the 601, 602, we got some fills along the very, very edges. Well, actually, we're just blending it on the bottom side. But for this top side, we have some fills up here. Yeah, it looks like. So 2 feet, we're going to call this area down here. Gradish, minus 1.5, minus 1.5. So after we do the cuts and the fills and everything like that, you're looking at roughly, you're going to cut the whole job site, 50,000 square feet, around 7. I already did this maybe like 30 minutes ago before doing this. So you're going to cut this around 7/10 roughly, all evenly. So the way we do that now is we go down in here, right? And we multiply the total square footage of the job site, which is 50,000 times 0.7. We get 35,000 square feet, cubic feet of export. So now to convert that over to cubic yards, we get 1,300. And after 1,300, we get 65. Now we have 65 loads. I'm just going to call it 60. We have 60 loads of export for this job site, plus the 20 loads of export from the building. Okay. Now is when we want to charge for the export of the soil of the building and also the rest of the job site. Okay, because we do not want to factor this into our prepping of it, because then our prep becomes an expense, really, because we're having to pay for all of that, all of the scope, the whole scope that goes into it. But now that we separated this, and we want to separate this for two reasons. I have one job site because I have been to the job site and I have seen potential ways to lose the dirt and save the client money. There might be a property perpendicular to that one. For example, we did a Hideaway Pizza up in McKinney. They had the parking lot extension not too long ago. Because we've done the parking lot, the initial building, I knew that the adjacent lot was a spoils lot. So everybody else, the GC was telling me, it was Ready Construction. They were telling me that everybody else, every other dirt contractor was giving them prices for exporting the dirt included into their price. Oh, it's going to be so and so many cubic yards of cut, and this is the price to export all that soil and all of that. And they were just not so really happy with the price, right? So with that being said, the initial way of looking at this is by not including the exporting of the soils in your initial price. What you can do is you can work them two ways and still make money on top. And this is how you do it. For example, at that job site in Hideaway Pizza, the owner owned the lot right next door. So what we had was maybe like around 2 feet of cut with the skid steer. But instead of including all of the cubic yards of cut and all of this and all of that, we excluded the price for export, but we included the price of losing it somewhere in its proximity, and we also included the price of cutting the soil. So as long as there's areas to put the soil, you just factor that into your price. Maybe go up $1 or $2. To move for the cost that it'll take you to maybe move the dirt maybe another 100 feet to another lot or another area where they can use it. And then sometimes I'm looking at this job site. This is an extension to an existing business. It has happened to us countless amount of times where the existing business, we did a Baptist church not too long ago. And we let them know we have 50 loads of export, but we're not going to include it if you have an area for us to lose it in. And they told us, yes, behind our buildings we have a really steep slope and a lot of dirt is going out. We were able to lose all of our soil right behind the building that was maybe 20 feet or maybe 30 feet away from the job site itself, from the cut that we were doing. We saved, and then of course all we did was just adjusted the price to prep the soil by $1 or $2. So we went up maybe $5,000, $10,000. But all we did now, that $5,000, $10,000 included the price to just move the dirt away from the job site and for us to grade it out. So that is why I'm not a big fan of including it'll be 567 cubic yards of cut. It'll be 1,742 cubic yards of fill, and this is your price to import, and this is your price to export. I'm not a big fan of that. What I like to do is I like to include the export of soils as a separate and alternative line item. So that way, in case we do export the soils, they know our price per truck, because we don't do it by what the job site may say, because each job site is different. We may go in there, and just because the soil swells up differently, you might have another additional 10 loads. Okay, or you might not have enough, which is ideally the case, but the big factor of this is you always want to look at how much soil is going to be coming out, right? So when you break it down into the trucks, if you include in your price as an ad alternative, let's just say 50 loads. 50 loads at $500 a load, well, maybe $400 a load. So 50 loads at $400 a load, that is roughly, what is that, 40,000 or 20,000? Let's see, 50 loads times 20,000. So 20,000 ad alternative if they want us to export out the soil. And the reason why I say 50 loads is because if you reach 50 loads and you're done, and there's still some soil, you're done. Your part of your scope of work is done. Compared to, it was, let's say, 2,500 cubic yards. If you start exporting soil and you're still not done and you've reached all the cubic yards, the GCs have told us, oh, well, it's because you're not loading your trucks up all the way, or because you guys are trying to cheat us on the loads and all that. And, there's just ways to avoid that. We just say, you know what, this is our price for 50 loads. We believe it's going to be 50 loads. And then, of course, this helps us with the big dreaded factor of other contractors also leaving their spoils, because the utilities, as you know, will come in, the plumbers will come in, the concrete guys, the electricians, the people that do the irrigation. Well, that's really much later, but you get the gist. The gist is that a lot of contractors will come in and have their spoils. When you give the GC a price per load to export the soil, it no longer matters if it's your soil or not. You're being paid to export the soil, and you're being paid a price that you agreed on to export it. So ideally, you want to export that soil, because then you'll be making money on every load that goes down the job site. So that is the ideal goal, right? To make money in each scope line item that you're doing. So the way, as you've seen, that I break down these plans is not by an exact model of how the square footage or the square yardage or the cubic, or basically any numbers that go into the job site. I look at it like how long is it going to take me? What are other people charging? And how can I do this most efficiently? How can I charge this most efficiently without having to pay for the biggest expenses, which are trucking and labor, right? But outside of labor, that's kind of unavoidable. That's for a different video topic, where I go into efficiency of the job sites, right? Of the way how you dig out the building affects how much money you make. How you start the job site can affect whether you make $20,000 or $2,000 of profit. There are many different ways to start the job site, but that is a different video. For this video, you're looking at roughly, what do we say, 20,000? So you're looking at roughly 140? So you're looking at $160,000. Well, your total bid price would be 140, with a $20,000 ad alternative of exporting 50 loads at roughly $400. If you have maybe $500, then of course it would be 25,000. But it's really up on you. Oh, excuse me. And then also it's going to be 140 plus whatever you think that you're going to spend on the 8 inches of flex space for the job site. So 4,000 square yards, that'll receive 8 inches of flex space. And that is the way we break this down. So I'm going to shorten this up. I'm going to send this over to you, Austin, and kind of follow up with a broken down way, just to show you how I had these numbers together. And I know I said it throughout the video, excuse me, just so you kind of look at what I'm looking at, right? So that is how I break down a proposal in less than, how long did I take? Not too long, but we'll see how long I took. But yeah.